The desert of Nevada had kept its secret for 12,000 years. Deep beneath the sand and rock, something ancient waited. It was not human. It was not from Earth. It had been placed there long before the first humans built their cities or wrote their stories. And on a cold morning in March, it finally woke up. Captain David Park was sitting in an underground room beneath the Pentagon. He was part of a team that watched the skies for threats. Satellites and sensors and computers filled the room. Screens showed data from all over the world and beyond. It was a normal day. David was drinking his third cup of coffee and thinking about his daughter, who had a birthday coming up. Then every screen in the room turned white. Lieutenant James Kim dropped his tablet. The sound of it hitting the floor was the only noise in the sudden silence. Every person in the room stared at their screens. The white light pulsed once and then twice, and then a sound filled the air. It was not a sound anyone had ever heard before. It was like music and like screaming and like something calling out across an impossible distance. David stood up slowly. His coffee cup fell from his hand. He did not notice. What the hell was that he said? Before anyone could answer, a shape appeared in the center of the room. It was made of golden light. It looked almost human, but not quite. Its edges flickered and shifted like flames in wind. When it spoke, the words did not come from its mouth. They appeared directly in the minds of everyone present. Seed species 7412 has reached technological maturity. The compact of silence has been broken. Coordinates have been transmitted. The harvest fleet is inbound. Estimated arrival is 14 Earth months. The golden figure vanished. The screens returned to normal. But nothing would ever be normal again. David grabbed his phone and started making calls. Within 1 hour, the president knew. Within 2 hours, every major government on Earth knew. Within 6 hours, the first ships appeared in the sky. They came through holes in space that opened like wounds in the fabric of reality. 23 vessels of designs no human had ever imagined. They did not attack. They did not threaten. They simply waited in orbit and asked to speak. Ambassador Grace Lee had spent 20 years representing the United States at the United Nations. She had dealt with dictators and terrorists and every kind of human conflict. Nothing had prepared her for this. She stood in the Great Hall of the UN as the alien representative materialized before the assembled leaders of humanity. This being was different from the golden figure. It was tall and thin with skin like polished silver. Its eyes were large and dark and filled with something that looked like sorrow. It called itself the Mediator. "We have watched your species for a very long time," the Mediator said. Its voice was soft and sad. "We have waited and hoped that this day would never come. But it has come, and we are bound by ancient law to tell you the truth." Grace stepped forward. She was not afraid. She had learned long ago that fear was useless in moments like this. "Then tell us," she said. "What is happening? What was that signal?" The Mediator was silent for a moment. Then it began to speak, and as it spoke, the world changed forever. "Your species was not born on this planet. You were created, engineered. 12,000 years ago, a race we call the Devourers came to this world. They took primitive apes and they changed them, made them smarter, made them breed faster, made them into something useful. Useful for what?" asked the Russian representative. His voice was shaking. "Food," said the Mediator. "Livestock. The Devourers plant seed species on planets across the galaxy. They let them grow and multiply. And then they return to harvest." The room erupted in noise. People shouting and crying and demanding answers. Grace raised her hand and waited for silence. It took a long time, but eventually the room grew quiet. "You said 14 months, she said. "What happens in 14 months? "The harvest fleet will arrive. 200 ships, each one larger than your largest cities. They will take your people. All of your people. No one will be spared. No one has ever been spared. Grace looked at the mediator. She saw the sorrow in its eyes, and she understood something. This being had seen this happen before. Many times. How many species have they done this to? She asked. We have records of 7,411 seed species, the mediator said. Your designation is 7,412. And how many have survived? The mediator did not answer. That was answer enough. The hall was silent now. 8 billion people on Earth, and all of them had just been told they were going to die. That they had always been meant to die. That their entire existence was nothing but a farm waiting for slaughter. Grace thought about her parents, who had come to America with nothing and built a life. She thought about her children, who were just starting their own families. She thought about every human who had ever lived and loved and dreamed. Then she thought about something else. She thought about how humans had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. She thought about how they had split the atom and walked on the moon. She thought about how every time someone had told humans they could not do something, they had done it anyway. Why are you here? She asked the mediator. You said you came to tell us the truth. But that is not all, is it? The mediator seemed surprised by her question. We came to offer sanctuary, it said. The Galactic Council has protected worlds where the Devourers cannot go. We can take some of your people there. Perhaps 3 million. They would be safe. Your species would survive in some form. 3 million out of 8 billion. Grace did the math in her head. It was nothing. A fraction of a fraction. She looked around the room at the faces of presidents and prime ministers and kings. She saw fear in their eyes. But she also saw something else. Something that the mediator clearly did not expect. She saw anger. Grace turned back to the alien representative. She stood up straight and spoke in a clear voice that carried to every corner of the room. There are 8 billion of us, she said. 8 billion human beings who have families and dreams and lives that matter. You are offering to save less than 1% of us. You are asking us to choose who lives and who dies. You are asking us to abandon our world and our people and everything we have ever built. The mediator nodded slowly. It is the only way to ensure some survival. Running is the only option. It is what every species does. Grace shook her head. Then every species has been wrong, she said. Humans do not run. We do not hide. We do not accept death because someone stronger says we must die. The mediator stared at her. What are you saying? Grace looked at the leaders around her. One by one they nodded. Presidents and prime ministers and kings. Old enemies and older friends. In that moment they were not Americans or Russians or Chinese. They were human. I am saying that we will fight, Grace said. I am saying that whatever comes for us will find out that humans are not cattle. We are not livestock waiting for slaughter. She stepped closer to the mediator. Her voice was quiet now, but everyone heard it. Tell your council that Earth will not run. Tell them that for the first time in history, a seed species is going to war. And tell the Devourers that they have made a terrible mistake. The mediator looked at her for a long moment. Then something changed in its dark eyes. Something that might have been hope. You will all die, it said. Maybe, Grace replied. But we will not die quietly. And we will not die alone. President Michael Cho stood in the Oval Office watching the screens that covered every wall. News from every country played at once. Riots in some cities. Prayer gatherings in others. Protests and panic and people demanding answers that no one could give. But there was also something else. Something that surprised everyone. Volunteers, millions of them. Billions even. People lining up at military recruitment centers. Scientists offering their skills. Factory workers ready to build whatever was needed. Old soldiers coming out of retirement. Young people who had never held a weapon saying they would learn. Michael had been president for 3 years. He had seen crisis before, but he had never seen anything like this. His chief of staff entered the room. "Sir, the other leaders are ready for the call." Michael nodded and turned to face the large screen that dominated one wall. Faces appeared one by one. The presidents of Russia and China. The prime ministers of Britain and India and Japan. Leaders from every continent. Old rivals who had never agreed on anything. Today, they would agree. "You have all seen the reports," Michael said. "You have all heard what the aliens told us. We have 14 months. Maybe less. We have to assume they will come early. We have to be ready." The Russian president spoke first. His name was Victor, and he had spent decades as an enemy of the West. "None of that mattered now. My country is prepared to share all. Military technology," he said. "All research, all resources. We hold nothing back." One by one, the others agreed. China opened its factories. India shared its scientists. Japan offered its robotics. The European Union combined all its resources into a single fund. In 6 hours, they created what no war or treaty or disaster had ever accomplished. A united human race. Michael addressed the world that night. His speech was broadcast on every channel in every language. "To every corner of the planet, we have been given a death sentence," he said. "Beings from beyond our world see us as nothing more than animals to be harvested. They expect us to run, to hide, to scatter and beg for mercy." He paused and looked directly into the camera. "They have made a terrible mistake." The response was immediate. Every nation on Earth signed the United Terran Compact. Old borders became meaningless. Old grudges were forgotten. For the first time in history, humanity had one government and one goal. Survival. General Susan Yoon was appointed Supreme Commander of Terran Defense Forces. She was 52 years old and had spent her entire life studying war. She had written books on military strategy that were taught every academy in the world. She had never expected to fight aliens, but she had always believed in being prepared for anything. Her command center was built beneath Geneva in an old bunker from the Cold War. Engineers expanded it in weeks. Screens and computers filled every room. Officers from every nation worked side by side. Her first meeting with her command staff lasted 12 hours. "Here's the reality," she told them. "We cannot match their technology. The Allied aliens have shown us what the Devourer ships can do. Their weapons are centuries ahead of ours. Their shields can stop our missiles. Their engines are faster than anything we can build." Colonel Thomas Beek was her chief engineer. He had designed the most advanced fighter jets in the world. Now he was designing something else entirely. Then, "How do we fight?" he asked. Susan pulled up images on the main screen. They showed the Devourer ships in detail provided by the Galactic Council races. "Look at these ships," she said. "What do you see?" The officers studied the images. They saw massive vessels with strange shapes and alien designs. "I see weapons," said one general. "Lots of weapons." Susan shook her head. "Look again. Look at what is not there." Colonel Beek understood first. "There is no armor," he said slowly. "The hulls are thin. These ships are not built for war. They are built for harvesting." Susan nodded. "Exactly. The Devourers have never faced a species that fights back. Their ships are designed to capture and transport, not to survive combat. Their weapons are meant to herd prey, not to fight enemies. So we hit them hard," said Admiral Peter Kwan, who commanded the naval forces. "Hit them fast. Make them bleed." "That is exactly what we do," said Susan. "We cannot win a straight fight, but we can make every victory cost them. We can make them pay for every inch of space." The factories started building that same week. In Detroit and Shanghai and Hamburg and Sao Paulo, the machines that once made cars now made weapons. Assembly lines ran 24 hours a day. Workers slept in shifts and ate at their stations. The entire industrial output of human civilization focused on one task. War. Dr. Hannah Park led the research teams. She was a physicist who had spent her career studying energy and matter. Now, she studied alien technology with a fury that bordered on obsession. The allied races helped as much as they could. They shared information about the Devourers, ship designs, weapon specifications, weaknesses that no one had ever tried to exploit. "Their shields are strong," said the mediator during one briefing, "but they are calibrated for energy weapons. Your primitive projectile weapons might actually penetrate them." Hannah looked at the alien with new understanding. "You are not just helping us because you feel sorry for us," she said. "You want to see if we can hurt them." The mediator was silent for a moment. "We have watched the Devourers harvest 7,000 species," it finally said. "We have seen civilizations that lasted millions of years wiped out in days. We have begged and pleaded and offered everything we have to stop them. Nothing has worked." It looked at Hannah with those dark, sorrowful eyes. "You humans are different. You are violent and stubborn, and you refuse to accept what others tell you is impossible. Part of us fears what you might become, but part of us hopes that your madness might succeed where our wisdom has failed." Hannah turned back to her work. She did not sleep for the next 3 days. The shipyards rose from nothing. Massive structures in orbit built by workers who had never left Earth before. The first Terran warship was completed in 4 months. It was crude compared to alien vessels. Thick armor and heavy weapons and engines that shook the hull when they fired. But it was human, and it was ready to fight. Susan watched the launch from her command center. The ship was called the Defiance. It would be the first of many. Colonel Beak stood beside her. "Do you think we can win?" he asked. Susan watched the ship climb into the darkness of space. She thought about her husband who had died 10 years ago. She thought about her children who were training to fight. She thought about 8 billion people who were counting on her to save them. "I do not know," she said honestly, "but I know that we will make them remember us. Whatever happens, the Devourers will never forget what they found on Earth. In secret facilities around the world, other projects moved forward. Weapons that humanity had hoped never to use. Nuclear bombs upgraded with alien technology. Biological agents. Things that no sane species would ever build. But humanity was not feeling sane anymore. Humanity was feeling desperate. And desperate humans were the most dangerous thing in the universe. The months passed. The fleet grew. Soldiers trained. Scientists worked. And in the darkness beyond the solar system, something ancient and hungry began to move. The harvest fleet was coming, and Earth was ready to meet it. 3 weeks before the predicted arrival date, the sensors screamed to life. Deep space monitoring stations detected the energy signature of fold space drives opening. The readings were massive, bigger than anything the Allied races had warned about. Commander Daniel Shin was running combat drills near Mars when the alert reached his ship. He was 38 years old and had been a fighter pilot before the war. Now he commanded a squadron of 32 destroyers, small fast ships with heavy weapons and thick armor. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Rachel Kwan, rushed onto the bridge. "Sir, we are receiving emergency broadcasts from Earth Command. The Devourers are here." Daniel felt his stomach drop. "How many?" Rachel looked at her screen. Her face went pale. 200 ships, sir. Each one is larger than anything we have ever seen. Daniel closed his eyes for one moment. He thought about his wife back on Earth. He thought about his son who was only 4 years old. He had promised to come home. He had promised to keep them safe. He opened his eyes. "All ships battle stations," he ordered. His voice was calm and steady. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." The Devourer fleet emerged from fold space in a perfect formation. 200 vessels, each one the size of a mountain. They were ugly things, dark and twisted with shapes that hurt the eyes to look at, organic and mechanical at the same time. Like something from a nightmare. At the front of the formation was the largest ship of all, the command vessel. It was bigger than a city, bigger than some moons, and it was heading straight for Earth. Back on Earth, General Susan Yoon watched the incoming fleet on her screens. Her face showed no fear, only cold calculation. "They outnumber us 50-1, she said quietly. Colonel Beek stood beside her. "What are your orders, General?" Susan studied the formation. She saw how the Devour ships moved, confident, unhurried. They were not expecting a fight. They were expecting to harvest. "Order Commander Shin to engage," she said. "Not to win, to test. I want to know how they fight. I want to know where they are weak." She turned to her communications officer. "And tell him that whatever happens, his people will be remembered." "Commander." Daniel received the orders. He understood what they meant. His squadron was being sent to die, but they would not die for nothing. "Listen to me," he said to his crews. "We are not going to win this battle. We are going to learn. Every shot we fire and every hit we take will give Earth information. Our deaths will help our families survive." He paused. "I am proud to serve with all of you. Now let us show these monsters what humans can do." The 32 destroyers accelerated toward the Devourer fleet. They were tiny compared to the enemy vessels, like insects attacking elephants. But insects could sting. Rachel Kwan was piloting the lead fighter. She had been flying since she was 16. She could do things in a cockpit that most people thought were impossible. Today she would find out if that was enough. The first Devourer ships opened fire, beams of energy that burned hotter than stars. Rachel dove and rolled and twisted through the barrage. Her ship shook with near misses. Warning lights flashed on every panel, but she was still alive. She lined up her first shot. The targeting computer locked onto a weak point in the enemy hull, a spot where the armor was thin, a spot that humans should not have known about. "Fox 3 away," she called out. The missile launched. It flew straight and true and struck the Devourer ship exactly where Rachel had aimed. The explosion tore through the hull. Secondary explosions rippled outward. The massive vessel broke apart. The first kill of the war belonged to humanity. Rachel did not celebrate. She was already lining up her next shot. Across the battlefield, the human destroyers fought with desperate fury. They took hits that would have destroyed any Allied ship. Their thick armor held longer than anyone expected. Their projectile weapons punched through Devourer shields that were designed to stop energy beams. "Commander." Daniel led his ship directly into the heart of the enemy formation. He fired everything he had, missiles and cannons and weapons that had no names yet. A Devourer harvester tried to capture his ship with a gravity beam. Daniel reverse thrust and the beam caught empty space. Then he accelerated straight at the harvester and opened fire at point-blank range. The harvester died. Daniel's ship survived. Merrily back on Earth, the Galactic Council observers watched in stunned silence. The Mediator stood beside General Yoon, its dark eyes wide with something that might have been wonder. "They are actually hurting them," it whispered. "In all my years, I have never seen anything like this." Susan did not look away from the screens. She was counting her ships, counting the enemy losses, doing the math that would determine humanity's future. 18 destroyers lost, she said quietly. 4,000 of our people dead. But they have destroyed 11 Devourer vessels. The Mediator shook its head. 11 ships. The Devourers have not lost 11 ships in the last 50 harvests combined. Your people fight like nothing we have ever seen. Susan finally turned to look at the alien. "We fight like we have everything to lose," she said. "Because we do." The Battle of the Belt ended when the surviving human ships retreated toward Mars. Commander Daniel was among them. His ship was barely holding together. Half his crew was dead. But he had done what he was ordered to do. He had made the enemy bleed. The Devourers paused their advance. For the first time in their ancient existence, they had encountered prey that fought back. Prey that could actually hurt them. They needed to think, to plan, to understand what they were facing. That pause gave humanity 3 more weeks. General Yoon called a meeting of all her commanders. "We have learned what we needed to learn," she told them. Their shields are weak against projectile weapons. Their ships are not built for combat. They are slow to react to unexpected attacks. And most importantly, they do not understand sacrifice. She pulled up tactical displays. They expected us to run. They expected us to scatter and hide and wait for death. Instead, we attacked them, and we hurt them, and we showed them that this harvest will be different. Colonel Beak spoke up. "They still outnumber us badly, General. We lost 18 ships, and they lost 11. At that rate, we will run out of ships before they do." Susan nodded. "That is true. If we keep fighting the same way. But we are not going to fight the same way." She brought up a new image. It showed something the scientists had been working on in secret. A weapon that could change everything. "We are going to trap them," she said. "We are going to make sure they cannot run. And then we are going to make them pay for every human being they have ever harvested." The officers looked at the weapon specifications. Some of them went pale. Some of them smiled. Rachel Kwan was promoted to squadron leader. She had scored 7 kills in the battle, more than any other pilot. When reporters asked her how she felt, she had one answer. "I feel angry," she said. "I'm just getting started." The Devourers began their advance again. But now they were cautious. Now they sent scouts ahead. Now they checked for traps. It would not help them. Humanity was done being prey, and the hunt was about to begin. 8 months of blood. 8 months of fire. 8 months of humanity refusing to die. The Devourers pushed toward Earth. Every day they came closer. Every day, more human ships burned in the void. But every day, the monsters paid a price they had never paid before. Admiral Chris Young commanded the defensive Titan. Saturn's largest moon had become a fortress. Underground bunkers and orbital weapons and a fleet of battered warships that had fought across the entire solar system. Chris had started the war as a captain. Everyone above him had died. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UTS Endurance. The ship had been hit so many times that the original hull was barely visible under all the patches and repairs. The crew was exhausted. They had not seen their families in months. Some of them never would again. Sir, the censors officer reported. Devourer fleet incoming. 8 battle groups. Over 100 vessels. Chris looked at his tactical display. He had 23 ships. Most of them were damaged. Some were held together with nothing but determination and spare parts. "What are our orders from Earth?" asked his first officer. Chris had received the orders an hour ago. "Hold Titan at all costs. Do not retreat. Earth needs time." He did not tell his crew that part of the message said the reinforcements were not coming. There were no reinforcements left to send. "All ships prepare for combat," he ordered. "We hold this moon. We hold it until there is nothing left to hold with." The Devourer fleet approached in their usual formation. Harvesters in the center protected by combat vessels on the flanks. They had learned some caution in the months of fighting, but they still did not truly understand what they were facing. Chris waited until they were close. Closer than any commander should allow an enemy fleet to come. Then he gave the order. "All ships attack. Target the harvesters. Ignore everything else." The human fleet surged forward. They flew straight into the Devourer formation. Weapons blazed from every ship. Missiles and railgun rounds and nuclear. warheads that had been saved for exactly this moment. The Devourers responded with overwhelming firepower. Energy beams cut through human ships. Gravity weapons crushed hulls like paper. In the first hour, Chris lost 8 vessels, but the harvesters burned. One by one, the great harvesting ships died. Human captains rammed their crippled vessels into enemy hulls. Pilots flew their fighters into engine ports and weapons arrays. Every death took more Devourers with it. Chris watched his fleet dying around him. He watched brave men and women sacrifice themselves without hesitation. And he kept fighting. The battle lasted 19 days. 19 days of constant combat. 19 days of sleeping in shifts and eating at battle stations. 19 days of watching friends die and then taking their places. When it was finally over, the human fleet had lost 60% of its ships. But the Devourer forward armada was destroyed. 100 vessels reduced to debris floating around Saturn rings. Admiral Jung reported to Earth Command. His voice was hoarse from days of shouting orders. "Titan is secure," he said. "Enemy forward fleet eliminated. We are ready for the next wave." There was a long silence. Then, General Yoon's voice came through the channel. "There is no next wave, Admiral. Your victory has broken their advance. They are pulling back to regroup." Chris sat down heavily in his command chair. Around him, his surviving crew was crying. Some from grief. Some from relief. Some from pure exhaustion. He had won. Somehow he had won. On Earth, the factories never stopped. Workers collapsed at their stations and were replaced within minutes. Machines ran until they broke and then were fixed and started again. The entire planet had become one giant production line. Dr. Hannah Park had not slept in 4 days. Her team worked in a bunker beneath Seoul. Banks of computers surrounded them. Alien equations filled every screen. She had been studying Devourer technology for months, learning how their ships worked, how their weapons fired, how their engines moved them across the galaxy. And she had found something. "I have it," she announced to her exhausted team. "I understand how their fold space drives work." Her lead assistant looked up. "Can we build our own?" Hannah shook her head. "Not yet. That would take years. But I can do something better." She pulled up her calculations on the main screen. Their drives work by folding space, creating a shortcut between 2 points. But the process is delicate. If something disrupts the folding at the right moment, the drive does not just fail. She looked at her team. With fierce determination. It explodes. And it takes everything nearby with it. The weapon was called Project Anchor. It took 3 months to build. 3 months of desperate fighting to buy the time. 3 months of human soldiers dying across the solar system to keep the Devourers away from Earth. While the scientists worked, when it was finished, the weapon was loaded onto a single stealth ship. The smallest and fastest vessel humanity had ever built. It would need to fly into the heart of the Devourer fleet and activate the device at exactly the right moment. It was a suicide mission. General Yoon called for volunteers. Every pilot in the fleet raised their hand. She chose Captain Mary Cho. Mary was 47 years old. She had 2 children on Earth, a son who was 12 and a daughter who was 9. She had been flying combat missions since the war began. She had more kills than any other pilot still alive. When Susan told her about the mission, Mary did not hesitate. "I will do it," she said simply. Susan looked at her. "You understand what this means. There is no way to escape after the device activates." Mary nodded. "I know. But if it works, my children will live. Everyone's children will live. That is worth my life." The night before the mission, Mary recorded a message for her family. "My beautiful children," she said into the camera. "I am sorry I will not be there to watch you grow up. I am sorry I will not see your graduations or your weddings or hold your children someday." She paused to wipe her eyes. "But I want you to understand why I am doing this. I am doing it because I love you. I am doing it because every parent loves their children enough to die for them. And tomorrow I get to prove that she managed to smile. Be brave. Be kind. And when you look up at the stars, remember that your mother is out there somewhere, still protecting you. Always. Captain Mary Cho launched at dawn. Her ship was so small and so fast that the Devourer sensors could not track it. She flew through their formation like a ghost, past the combat vessels, past the harvesters, all the way to the command ship at the center of the fleet. She armed the device. General Yoon, I'm in position, she reported. Ready to activate on your command. Susan's voice came back steady and calm. The device is armed, Mary. You have done everything we asked. Is there anything you want to say? Mary looked out at the stars. She thought about her children. She thought about Earth. She thought about all the humans who had died to get her to this moment. Tell my kids, she said. Tell them their mother did not die running. Tell them she made the monsters pay. Then she pressed the button. Project Anchor activated in the heart of the Devourer fleet. It sent out a pulse that disrupted every fold space drive within 10 million kilometers. The drives did not just fail. They tore themselves apart. Explosions rippled through the Devourer formation. Ships that tried to escape found their engines destroying them instead. In seconds, the fleet lost the ability to retreat, and in the chaos, no one noticed the small human ship being consumed by the blast. Captain Mary Cho was gone, but she had changed everything. The Devourers could not run. They could not call for reinforcements. For the first time in their ancient existence, they were trapped. Trapped with their prey, and humanity was coming for them. General Susan Yoon stood on the bridge of the UTS Defiance, the largest warship humanity had ever built. Around her, the entire Terran defense fleet had gathered. 347 vessels. Everything that remained after a year of war. They were not enough. But they were all that stood between the Devourer remnants and 8 billion human lives. Susan looked at her officers. They were exhausted, wounded. Some of them had been fighting so long they had forgotten what peace felt like. But none of them had forgotten why they were fighting. She opened a channel to all ships. This is General Yoon, she said. You all know what we face today. The enemy cannot run. They cannot hide. They cannot call for help. Thanks to Captain Cho and Project Anchor, they are trapped in our solar system. She paused. They came here expecting cattle. They came expecting to harvest us like they have harvested thousands of species before us. They expected fear and submission and easy prey. Her voice hardened. Show them what humans do to predators. 347 ships accelerated toward the Devourer fleet. The enemy still outnumbered them nearly 3-1. Their weapons were still more powerful. Their ships were still larger, but the humans did not care. Commander Daniel Shin led the first wave. His squadron had been rebuilt 3 times since the Battle of the Belt. Most of his original crew was dead. He had written more condolence letters than he could count. Today, he would write no more. Today, they would end this. All fighters launch, he ordered. Target their command ship. Everything we have. Human fighters poured out of the carriers. Thousands of small craft flown by pilots who knew they might not survive the hour. Rachel Kwan was among them. She had become the deadliest pilot in the fleet. 32 confirmed kills. A legend among her fellow pilots. She dove straight at the Devourer command vessel. The massive ship filled her entire view. Energy beams flashed past her cockpit. Missiles exploded around her. She did not slow down. Her wingman took a hit and vanished in a ball of fire. She kept flying. Her targeting computer locked onto a weak point in the command ship hull. The same kind of weak point she had exploited in her very first battle. For everyone who died, she whispered. And she pulled the trigger. The missile struck true. The explosion tore a hole in the command ship armor. 100 more missiles followed from 100 more pilots. The great vessel shuddered under the assault. On the bridge of the Defiance, Susan watched the battle unfold. She saw human ships dying. She saw Devourer ships dying. The void was filled with fire and debris and the bodies of the fallen, but humanity was winning. The void was filled with fire and debris and the bodies of the fallen, but humanity was winning. Devourers had never faced an enemy like this. They had never fought prey that was willing to die, that was eager to die, that flew damaged ships directly into enemy vessels rather than retreat. Lieutenant Kevin Rhee led a boarding party onto one of the larger Devourer harvesters. His squad of 12 Marines fought through corridors designed for capture, not combat. The Devourers had ground troops, but they were slow and clumsy. Built for herding, not fighting. Kevin's squad cut through them. They lost soldiers with every room they took. 6 became 5, became 4, became 3. By the time Kevin reached the reactor chamber, he was alone. He was wounded. His armor was cracked. His rifle was empty. But he had one weapon left. The nuclear device strapped to his chest. He opened a channel to the fleet. His voice was calm. Almost peaceful. Earth remembers, he said. Then he pressed the detonator. The harvester died in a flash of nuclear fire. Its destruction sent shockwaves through the nearby Devourer ships. Their formation broke. Their coordination failed. And humanity pressed the attack. Admiral Chris Young brought his battered fleet into the heart of the enemy formation. Ships that should have been decommissioned months ago fought with savage fury. Crews that had not slept in days fired weapons until the barrels melted. A Devourer battleship targeted the Defiance. Energy beams burned through the armor. Secondary explosions rippled through the hull. Susan was thrown from her chair. She got back up. All weapons fire on that battleship, she ordered. Everything we have. The Defiance and 12 other ships concentrated their fire. The Devourer battleship tried to evade. Too slow. Too late. It exploded. One by one, the Devourer ships died. Some tried to surrender. Humans did not accept surrender from those who had come to harvest them. Some tried to ram Earth itself. Human pilots flew into their path and stopped them with their own ships. When the last Devourer vessel was reduced to debris, silence fell across the solar system. Susan sat in her command chair. The Defiance was barely functional. Half the systems were offline. The crew was decimated. But they were alive. We won, she said quietly. She could barely believe it. We won. The mediator appeared on her screen. Its dark eyes were wide with something Susan had never seen in an alien face before. Wonder. You have done the impossible, it said. In 10,000 years, no species has ever defeated the Devourers. You have killed them. All of them. Every ship they sent to harvest you is gone. Susan looked at the debris fields that surrounded Earth. She thought about Captain Mary Cho and Lieutenant Kevin Rhee and the thousands of others who had given their lives. She thought about the families that would never be whole again. We lost so much, she said. The mediator nodded slowly. Yes, but you survived. Your species will continue. Your children will grow up and have children of their own. Because of what you did here today, it paused. The Devourer homeworlds will learn of this. They will know that seed species 7,412 fought back, that you destroyed an entire harvest fleet. They will fear humans for 1,000 generations. Susan thought about that. Fear. The Devourers had spread fear across the galaxy for millions of years. Now they would know what it felt like. We are not interested in being feared, she said. We are interested in making sure this never happens again. To anyone, the war was over. But humanity was just beginning. In the years that followed, Earth rebuilt. The scars of war slowly healed. Children who had been born during the conflict grew up in a world that knew it was not alone in the universe. The Terran Defense Fleet expanded. Human ships now patrolled the borders of Galactic Council space. They protected worlds that had once watched humanity with pity. Worlds that now looked at humans with respect and perhaps a little fear. Ambassador Grace Lee stood before the Galactic Council 5 years after the final battle. The chamber was full of representatives from 100 different species, all of them watching the human woman, who had once told them that her people would not run. We know what it is to face extinction, she said. We know the terror of the harvest. And we make this promise to every species in this galaxy. She looked around the chamber at all the alien faces. Never again. We will never allow another species to suffer what we almost suffered. We will hunt down every devourer. We will destroy every harvest fleet. And we will protect every world that asks for our help. The chamber was silent. Then slowly one representative began to applaud. Then another. Then another. Until the entire council was standing and cheering for the species that had done the impossible. Grace smiled. The devourers had come to Earth expecting cattle. They had found something else entirely. They had found wolves, and the galaxy would never be the same. Back on Earth, a small girl stood in a memorial garden. Thousands of names were carved into the walls around her. The names of everyone who had died in the war. She reached up and touched one name. Mary Cho. Her brother stood beside her. He was 17 now. Almost a man. Do you remember her? The girl asked. The boy nodded. I remember she used to sing to us. I remember she made the best pancakes. I remember she told us she would always protect us. He looked up at the stars that were just beginning to appear in the evening sky. She kept her promise, he said. The girl took her brother's hand. Together they walked out of the memorial and into a future their mother had died to give them. A future where humanity would never be prey. Again, the stars burned bright above them, and somewhere, out in the darkness, the wolves were watching, ready.